Is she doing okay?
She is doing okay. She messaged me this morning. And I know, Janae, she told me that you two have been connecting, and she's told me that your support and engagement with her has been so, so helpful. Um,
Oh, I'm glad.
yeah, she told me that. I thought you would like to know that your sisterhood has really meant a lot to her. But she let me know this morning that it looks like her dad, they're saying, is going to pass within the week. So she
Oh, wow.
him tonight, and she doesn't think that she'll be able to be here. So
Yeah, that makes sense
yeah,
completely.
it does. So maybe we can take a moment to, at some point after we do our shares, when we go around, maybe we just hold some space for Sasha and send her
Yeah,
loved ones some prayers and healing energy to help her get through this time, because it's a big one.
absolutely.
A big thing.
Yeah, it is a big thing.
Yeah, it is. Well, I
Big
miss all
moment.
of you. I'm so happy to be back. I'm officially back in the States. Um,
Yay!
yeah, so it's good to be here again. Um, and I am excited to dive in today. I want to talk today about, we're going to talk a little bit about emotion. Janae, do you mind if I mute you? I'm going to mute you on my
No,
end.
no, no, go ahead.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about emotion, and I think that this is going to be a nice build off of the work that we've done, first with NVC, and then our Enneagram, our core wound, healthy survival, self strategies that we've been exploring last week's or last session's conversation around attachment and attachment style. And now we're going to be talking about our emotions. And we're going to talk about something called primary and secondary emotions. And then I'm going to share a 4-step process for connecting to your emotions and moving through your emotions. And then we're going to teach around it today. I don't know if we'll have time to actually go through an exercise together, but if we do, we will, but most likely not. So it'll most likely just be a teaching and dialogic experience today. And then hopefully next time we'll actually do some processing. The other thing that I just want to put out there, I would like to, just some housekeeping really quickly. I would like to not next Sunday because I will be traveling, but next week sometime, I would like for those of us who are doing the Camino de Santiago to get together and have a call to start our preparations for the experience. So on that call, we're going to start talking more about logistics. I'm going to begin sharing with you, like, where are we going to meet? What's the trip going to entail? And we need to start, if you haven't already, start training like now. We're going to be hiking 7 to 8 hours a day. So it's time to get, your hiking gear, get your boots, get your shoes or whatever you're going to wear, your packs, and start walking. So Natasha and I have been talking about this, and we want to make this an opportunity for those of us who are participating in it to do this together as a group, to train together as a group, to hold each other accountable as a group. And yeah, so we need to start, if you haven't booked flights, I know Justine's booked flights, but now's the time to start getting into some of these logistical elements. I'm actually I think I'm going to be hiring a guide to take us on the trip. I thought about leading the actual hike and holding space for us together. And I think I would rather not get us lost or confused. So yeah, Justine's like, good idea, Jess. So I'm looking at bringing a guide on board to go with us. Hopefully it'll be a female. That's my desire, is to have a feminine energy with us on the trip. Somebody that speaks Basque, speaks Spanish, who knows the ins and outs of the trail, and can be supportive to us so that we can do our work and hold space while we're on that walk together. So anyway, I may be putting out a poll for us to get on a phone call and a Zoom session and have that conversation in the next like 7 to 10 days or so. All right, just putting that out there in preparation. Okay, so let's start with some of our big shifts and sharing what has been moving for us over the past couple of weeks since we had our last session. So why don't we start today with Justine?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Big shift for me this week was definitely trying to keep into the healthy self and not getting to kind of like victim mode, and also not trying to go the other way into survivor, like fighting self, and just accepting and being. So it was really good to I want to say catch myself, but it's not catching myself, just to just have the emotions go through, but not react on them, and just observe them, and I don't know, have them happen, and then not take it personally, and just move on. So it's been really good. It was a really good week in terms of that, like having the negativity from my landlord, and trying to genuinely help people, and kind of being, my victims, or just wanted to kind of be like, I'm trying to be good and people are just punishing me for being nice, and it's not that. It's not that. That's what it wanted to go that way. And then kind of wanting to be like, no, I'm doing the right thing, you're not doing the right thing, just letting that go as well, and just going, oh, okay, here's the situation, and then solving it without any serious sleep loss. Or I know that in the past I would have had sleep lost and gone through all of the shit, beat myself up, and then try to beat somebody else up, and those kind of things. So it didn't happen for me. It's big shift, massive. Yeah,
that's huge, Justine.
it was massive. Yeah,
that's really, really big. I'm so proud of you, and I see you in your choice to detach.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how do you think your attachment style and your awareness around that may have played into your responsiveness in this situation?
Well, definitely, again, for me, the biggest sort of tool that I used was the NVC, just trying to figure out what he wanted to communicate, wondering what his core wound, or what survival something that we did to him, or not did to him, but he's interpreting. And then also feeling like, what's our situation? What's the empathy that we have for our situation? It's the same thing, survivor, like having a secure place to stay, having his place secure where he has invested money in. And so that NVC, so that's just helped me just understand his situation, understand my situation, and then just make a solution without having to be all emotional about it, or it wasn't even like, in the end, I wasn't even that worried. Like, I'm like, oh, well, if we don't stay here, we won't stay here. We'll just go somewhere else. Like, there was no, like, no, this is my home, and, blah, blah. It was just like, oh, okay, well, whatever. If we can't work it out, we can't work it out. If we can, I'm sure we can. But, it just wasn't something that I guess triggered. And I know from my previous ways of dealing with this kind of stuff, I would have been very emotional on it. Detached. I wouldn't have been able to detach.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily detach, because I was still in it. I wouldn't have been able to accept each side of the story as a valid side of the story.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that the NVC has been a tool for you, not even necessarily just to have conversation, but as a tool for reflecting more deeply on your feelings and helping you understand and accept perspectives.
Yes.
And then from there, create an emotional distance from these situations so that you don't feel like a victim or trapped. And you can instead communicate more clearly, and then also see solutions more clearly. Is that my hearing?
So much more clearly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. and then, worrying about, oh, what are the Brazilians going to think? Now I have to kick them out of here. And are they going to feel like, we're just shuffling people around in Canada and Salt Springs unfriendly, and then just realizing, no, I have a way of communicating this in a non-emotional way, and they also, not putting their story in my head without actually knowing their story.
Mm.
So they're totally fine, and they're like, yeah, no, we understand, we knew it was temporary, we really feel more settled about it, we understand how this all works now. So because I was worried about that, I was like, oh man, now I'm gonna make my landlord happy and try and make these guys happy, and I didn't worry about it. I just thought, okay, I'll just do exactly NVC, and it was really easy and seamless, and I don't feel like I haven't destroyed any relationships at all, because I actually played tennis tournament yesterday and my landlord is there because of course I play tennis with her. So just keeping that all real and normal. It was so easy to do, where I would have struggled with that.
Mm.
Even maybe 4 months ago, I would have struggled to be normal. Not normal. Normal. Just like it is not affecting anything.
Yeah, to just show up.
Just show up. Just be,
Mm.
play Justine. Just be tennis Justine.
I love that, Justine. I'm
Mhm.
so, I just want to honor you and for choosing to have the courage to apply the tools that you've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have the tools doesn't mean that you need to use them or you choose to use them. So you took an edgy step in choosing to apply the tools. And then
Mm-hmm.
for also learning to let go and be detached. And there was a lot here for you. And I see you, sister. That's bold and that's really big. And I honor you. So everybody, let's honor Justine for her amazing win. Yay!
It's huge. Massive. Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Justine. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's hear from Lynn next and then Janae.
So let's see, outcomes over the past 2 weeks. So first of all, my hair tends to reflect my mood.
So what does your hair say now?
I've got 80s hair. I don't understand why.
So what does that mean? What do you interpret that to mean?
So there are two interpretations. One is I'm frenzied. One is I'm healthy. Because this is what my hair used to look like before I became an anxious mess back in my teenage years. This was my hair. So it's literally been 30 years where it's been thin, a little wavy, stringy, but not like this. This is me, when I was 14, 15, 16. So I find that fascinating. In general, things have been good. I've done a lot of detachment from my family the past couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was in the hospital, and I think I texted you a picture of him by mistake, Jess, because don't ask.
I didn't get it.
Oh, good. That's good.
Okay.
Where it was a frenzy when my dad, 78, had a massive infection.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself getting angry at my parents, frustrated that they had no idea what to do, angry that I was having to take care of them. Just really, I was angry. I was just pissed off. I was angry that I was the only one doing anything. So I spent about a day in the woe is me mode, pissed. Then the good news is I recognized it and said, all right, Lynn, what's going on? So I stepped back to problem solving mode, to make sure my dad was healthy, to get him better. But then I separated. I said, all right, dad is better. I'm leaving.
Mm.
My sister Carol reached out to me today trying to drag me back in. No.
Mm.
So I did what I felt was right in terms of being a daughter and helping them get better. But I got sucked in for a day to the emotion of it. But I had to step out. I had to step out of the chaos
Mm.
because it was a whirlwind of emotional insanity.
Where
And
did
as soon as it was over, I said, I'm leaving. I didn't see why. I just said, all right, guys, dad's better. I'm going back to my life.
Mm. And what did that
Um,
teach you?
but I was surprised by the anger I had at my parents.
Mm.
I've been angry with them offline, not in front of them, for a long time. But I was actually yelling at them. I felt really bad. And I found myself getting impatient with them.
Mhm.
So that was really hard. That was last week. And I'm still emotionally recovering. I mean, I'm exhausted, just fucking exhausted from it. But the good news is I detached. As soon as I could, I was done. I'm gone, out of there.
Mm. And what did this experience teach you?
That I can watch this, I can stand on the sidelines and watch and still help, but I don't have to be in the middle of the hurricane.
Mm.
Like Sue was in the middle, Jen was in the middle. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. I just can't do it. I can help from a detached place.
Mm. And what part do you think you were calling on within yourself to embody that?
What's interesting, what I realized when I was getting angry at them, I think I was calling on that very, what do we call it? The very high self?
Higher self, healthy self.
No, it wasn't healthy. It was the I'm better than you self.
Righteous.
The righteous. You guys are losers. You can't even take care of yourself. You don't even know when to call the doctor. What the fuck is the matter with you?
Mm. Yeah.
You guys look so pathetic, just sitting there looking at me like you're 80 years old, which they are. So I was in that very unhealthy self.
So level like 2 energy, blaming.
Yeah, probably level 2 energy. Definitely level 2 energy.
Yeah.
Blaming, angry, conceited. I'm better than you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not very healthy at all. Then anger hit. Why? I've too many things to be doing. Why are you guys dragging me into this? Just hire somebody. But then eventually I moved into healthy self, where I said, all right, these are my parents. I love my parents. I need to make sure dad's okay. And then I left. As soon as dad got back from the hospital, he was okay. Goodbye. I detached.
That's really powerful, and to be able to move, like, I'm sure that everybody else is hearing this too, but what I'm really hearing in this is the way that you move through a range of emotional experience
It really was.
and then ultimately came back to a place of love for them. And what I'm hearing is also respecting and loving yourself.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, I came back and said, all right, I'm going to stay with dad until he's okay. But then once he was okay, I didn't have to cling like I would have in the past, had to cling. All right, just be very clingy, looking for appreciation or looking for something. No, I did to make sure he was okay. I've got things to do. I've got to take care of me now. So I went home. But it was a huge range of emotions. Holy cow.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you in that. And I just want to acknowledge your mindfulness and your awareness of the experience and your choicefulness. And that's where the empowerment comes from.
Right. I was making choices every moment.
Yes, the choice to set that boundary and to hold that boundary. That's a really big step too. A lot of boundary holding so far
Oh my
happening.
gosh. And I had to hold the boundary with Susan.
Yeah.
Back off.
Mm-hmm.
Back off.
Mm-hmm. So how does it feel to hold your boundaries?
Exhausting. Like I said, it feels good. It feels great. But I'm like a wet rag today. Just like it was hard. It was emotionally and physically really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Michael, I'm like, I am so freaking tired. I'm just like wiped out from, it was like,
Yeah.
So
So
it was hard.
over time, the process of holding boundaries gets easier and easier because that emotional roller coaster of attachment to the experience, you become faster and faster at detaching and recognizing that the boundaries are being overstepped. So there was a period of time in the experience where your boundaries were being usurped, or you were allowing them to be overtaken. But soon, as you start to feel like we need those experiences to where our boundaries are pushed, where we feel we're off center or overtaken, so that we can understand this is where the line is. I don't know if you remember, Lynn, you weren't in the most recent version of Worth to Wealth, but when we talked about boundaries in Worth to Wealth, we talked about the idea of like a fence line in a yard or a castle, I think is the metaphor.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that.
Yeah, I think we have, and just to refresh that, you have the fence around the outside, that's a boundary, and then you have the moat that's around the castle, and that's a boundary, and then you have the inside of the castle and the door to the castle, and that's a boundary, right? So there's layers, and different reactions and responses and consequences happen as people cross, or as you allow other people to cross your boundaries at those different layers. And so it sounds like perhaps the boundary came a little too close to the center of the castle, right? And then as soon as you recognize that, you were able to say, okay, so everybody out.
Music, get out of my face. Mom and Dad. Jen, take Mom, because I've had enough of her for now.
The party's over, so you can.
But it was hard. I was white knuckling, holding the boundaries up.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, it's a boundary. I mean, it was like, all right, I'm going to stay inside my own fence.
Right. It is hard in the beginning. Well, I'm not going to use that word hard because I don't like that word, but
it was emotional. It was difficult. It was a conscious effort to stay in place.
Yes. Unfamiliar and conscious, like a conscious efforting is, I think, a good way of describing it. Yeah.
So that was my week.
I'm familiar. I think that's a beautiful week. And I'm so proud of you for holding that boundary with your family, because I know how big that is for you to hold that space. So everybody, let's honor Lynn and her boundaries and the way she just held them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We see you. Thank you, Lynn. That's fantastic. I'm really, really proud of you. Yeah. All right, Shanae.
Yeah. So this is the second week that my husband was working in the Bay Area, and so he's been there 2 weeks already, and he's flown back on the weekends twice now. And I thought that I was doing really good because I was, staying busy and focused on my work, although I did not get out socially on my own, which is not a good thing. And although I was quite busy and doing stuff that needed to be done, I completed my Intuition 101 training with Christy Marie Sheldon and did all the graduation practice sessions and everything, and which is a big deal. And anyway, long story short, I thought I was doing great, except for the fact that I didn't get out socially. And then we ended up entertaining all afternoon and into the evening yesterday. And that ended up me slipping and not eating enough and drinking a little bit too much wine. And something surfaced after the guests left. And it was, you know, silly and whatever, but it was like, oh my God, I think my husband wants children. And oh, I'm 49, so that means he's going to want a younger wife and all this stuff, and, you know, ridiculousness, right? So yeah, I thought I was doing great with this whole living apart during the week kind of thing. And I'm not normally insecure or whatever. My husband doesn't want kids, but for some reason with kids being here and everything, I just somehow that came to my third glass of wine, you know, over 6 hours or something, brain. And yeah, so I definitely, that revealed that I wasn't doing as well as I thought I was, you know.
So how are you doing, Shanae?
I am doing well. I mean, like I said, the first week I was really busy with having to coordinate all these graduation readings with people all around the world. And that kept me very busy at all kinds of hours. And then this week, I kind of ran out of steam and wasn't really sure what was going on, other than maybe feeling tired from doing all this energy work, which doesn't really make sense either. So, you know, the aloneness is definitely something I'm not used to. I think I am doing well. I do trust my husband. We do have a good, solid relationship. And he trusts me and all that stuff. But it is, I think, the aloneness. So I need to make it a priority to get out of the house socially with other women, starting this week, every week, you know, because
yeah, go ahead.
I just stayed so focused on these truly high priority things, you know, for this new healing modality that I've been studying, and also stuff for my business with this consultant. But it's not very healthy as an extrovert for me to be cooped up in the house by myself, other than speaking with people and, you know, on the phone or Zoom chats or whatever. So, so that, you know, survivor self was not, you know, it was that isolation that is my tendency when things are a little bit off.
Yeah. And
was kicking in.
And I'm curious, what do you think you're isolating yourself from?
I don't know, like having to put myself out there. I mean, to be honest, most of my, you know, with the one girlfriend that blew up at me, and I have not chosen to step into that relationship again, was the only friend that I had actually in the area, and everybody else lives so much further away. So I've been meaning to put myself out there, create like a meetup or something, to meet other like-minded women in this area. And I guess it's just kind of been an energy levels thing or something. I'm not really sure.
What's the
You
story?
know,
What's the story or the thought that you tell yourself when you think about engaging with these other women that you don't know, meeting new friends?
just, I hope that it's worth it. Like, sounds terrible, I know, but you know, I hope it's worth it, worth the effort of creating a meetup group and organizing and all that stuff.
I'm
I
curious,
hope that
what makes you feel the need to create the meetup group versus attending something that already exists?
I have attended meetups. In fact, you know, there's some business networking, women's business networking groups that I really liked, but they have not been active in the past few months. And so when I need to be out and more social, they have just not been active. And I've even, you know, reached out to the organizers and said, hey, would you like some help organizing or something? And they just haven't been responsive. So, you know, whether they're on vacation, I don't know.
But that's for
But
events that have already existed, but what about finding new things? How does that feel?
finding new things, what do you mean?
Finding new events to go to or experiences where you might meet other people.
Yeah,
I hope it's worth it. Does that still come up, or is it a different thought?
yeah, definitely. I hope it's worth it. It's definitely a feeling I get, you know, and I'm sure that it's just that survivor self after being so burned with this last girlfriend of mine. Yeah, that's me. If I organize it, then I have more ability to, you know, put a description that suits the vibe that I'm looking for, the people I'm looking for, that kind of thing.
You feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel safer. Yeah, this kind
Yeah.
of goes back to the work that we've been doing for a little bit around trusting women. Trusting
Around what?
trusting women and friendship, and
Yeah.
the fear of, you know, being hurt by other women specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I feel you there, Janae. I feel that fear, and I also feel your grief.
Yeah.
You know, the 7 in you was probably really excited by having this training to complete. It was a perfect distraction, perfect
Oh, totally.
for immersion away from the discomfort of missing your partner and
Yeah.
this. And then as soon as that ended, it's kind of like screeching halt, like, you know,
Into exhaustion. Yeah, after doing all that. And yeah,
typical
exactly.
7 patterning. Go, 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 go. Suddenly there's a void in space and energy, and it's just kind of an experience of collapse is the best way to describe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that has been my my cycle for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. And it's okay.
Yeah.
And to recognize that there's 2 drivers for that. One driver of that is, like we talked about, the joy, the desire, the motivation, the inspiration. The other driver of that is the the fear, the trepidation, the avoidance behavior. So there can be two
Yeah.
places that it's coming from. And especially if there's feelings that you're denying, then that collapse feels even deeper and even darker and more lonely. And now you're collapsing and you're not with your partner to hold you in that,
Yeah.
in the same
Yeah.
way. So that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny though, because I thought that I was doing so well. And then, you know,
That's why Natasha and I have been checking in on you. You're like, she's saying
so
that
much.
she's doing good, but I know you enough to know that you're really good at saying that you're doing really good.
Yeah. I am really good at that. I'm
You're
so
really
good at that.
You're so good at that. It's one of your strategies, right?
I'm so good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, you've developed that up really, really well. But I want to acknowledge you today for the fact that you keep showing up to the aloneness and that you're really moving into embracing this experience that you're having.
Yeah.
You know, you're not running away from it. You're stepping towards it, and I feel your sadness, and I also feel your what's the word, like hopefulness. There's sadness, but there's a
Yeah.
hopefulness that I feel there too. I sense both.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
mhm.
And I'm really, I mean, obviously, because of my makeup, I am optimist, you know, I am feeling into that optimism and
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Well, today's conversation, I think, is going to be especially helpful for you to, as a 7, who are master practitioners, to talk about feelings.
Hey, Jess,
Yeah.
can I ask you, did you post the core wounding of the?
I don't know if I did.
If you would do that, I am so interested in
I will.
core wounding.
What I'll do is I'll just send you a picture of yours. There's like 15 pages. That's why it's kind of difficult. So I'll just send you a picture of yours, and that way you'll have it.
Can I also get the other numbers that I am made up of?
You're a 7, a 3, and a 2, right?
I think so. I'll have to check on that.
That's what I think I remember. You were a 7, a 3, and a 2, but check. Yes.
7, 3 for sure.
I think 2 is the other one.
What was the 2, the name of the 2?
The 2 is the hold on a second. 2 is the helper, the connector, the manipulator, the nurturer, the helper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can send you those.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'll send them to you after the call. No problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. So everybody, let's acknowledge Janae for, you can't see us, but we're sending you sparkle hands.
Thank you.
For your power.
Thank you.
For your grace in the transition.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's now just take a moment to pause in silence and maybe send Sasha some prayers for strength and love and grace as she and her family are making this transition. So go ahead and close your eyes now. And if you want to hold up your hands or hold your hands out in some way and just beam her with love and energy. Okay. Thank you, ladies. All right, so today I want to have a conversation about emotion. Emotion and feeling, we talked a little bit about in NVC. You have that great list now through NVC of emotions. But what we haven't talked about is something called primary and secondary emotion. So today I want to talk about primary and secondary emotion. And I have some great stuff here that I'm going to be referring to. And we're going to talk about healing the inner child through something called the 4 Fs. And we're going to talk about what happens when we deny the expression of our primary emotions, and how the suppression and the denial of primary emotions produces certain results and symptoms in our lives. And from this, my desire is that you can become more in tune with your experiences of when you are expressing a primary emotion, or when you might be trapped in a secondary emotion, which is a form of denial, so that you can move past the survival strategy, which ultimately denial and suppression is born of a survival mechanism and a survival self, and come towards the core wound and meet that wound with the healthy self in love and compassion. So in order to go through that, it's important to know, when am I actually connected to my core emotion and my primary emotion, or when am I trapped in secondary emotion? Because if you can identify that, then you might create the space for you to process that true, pure emotional experience and then really release it. And all of us are always moving through different emotional experiences. You know, Lynn moving through the emotional experience that you had last week and holding your boundaries and starting your business. Janae moving through the emotional experience of grief and sense of loss and sadness that you're noticing now in the separation with your partner and the transition of your physical environment. And Justine with the relationship that you had with your landlord and the things that are happening in your veterinary practice around this employee. There's a lot of emotion there, anger and sadness. And Sasha, if you're watching this recording, obviously with the ending of your father's life and witnessing that and holding that and all of the emotion that comes with it. And Natasha too, you know, you're going through your own transitions and starting your business and building it up to the next level. And so there's a lot that we're moving through. So that's why we're here talking about emotion. And I want to start off with, I'm going to try to play a musical track for you that has a reading. This is a reading from Rumi. And you can look this up if you'd like. I can also post it in the group. But there is a poem by Rumi that's called The Guest House. Has anybody heard this? No? Okay. It's really beautiful. And Coldplay, I guess, got hold of it and created a musical track to it in the background that I think is just absolutely beautiful. It's on their album, their newest album, Head Full of Dreams, and the song is titled Kaleidoscope. So I'm going to add this to the Journey playlist. So it's actually there already, so you can go and listen to it whenever you'd like. It's only about 2 minutes long, which is one of the reasons why I love it. So that if you're ever in a place when you're experiencing emotion and you need to be reminded of the okayness of that, this is a nice, simple piece to help ground you and maybe even crack you open if that's what you need to be cracked open a little bit. So I'm going to try to play this and hopefully you will be able to hear it. All right.
Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide.
So I just copied and pasted this poem for you here, and I'll read it again. Were you able to hear it okay? I don't know if you were able to hear it. Okay, so I'm just going to read it to you then. Somebody needs to invent a digital solution to share music in video. Like, I have wanted this so much, because then we could dance together and we could do all of these things, but I'm trying to broadcast anyway. Okay, so the guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So when you hear that, what does it bring up in you? What does it stir in you?
I think it speaks to me that, you know, we have these emotions and that they are, you know, hints of, or the obvious clues of a deeper self or meaning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our emotions are like breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And denying their stay, so to speak, is denying ourselves as well.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you.
For me, it reminds me of the story. I don't know if you told me this story, Jess, or somebody else, about how when our soul was up in heaven, how God or the universe gave us a choice. Do we want to come down to this earth and suffer and be emotional for the purpose of healing others? And how each of us made that choice to come down. And our emotions and our suffering is what makes us who we are and has led us here. I know I'm totally screwing up the story, but there's some story around that.
Mm. Yeah, so the condition of being human and the choicefulness.
Right.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you, Lynn.
I think for me, it's that it just reminds me of the saying, every cloud has a silver lining. There's usually a reason for all these emotions or these guests. And And if you resist every single one, then you're probably not going to get to what was behind. Who's the next guest? Because it could be amazing. As it says, you could clear out a whole bunch of stuff for something even better.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Who's the next guest?
Mm-hmm.
Who's next on the guest list?
Mm-hmm. If they're all lining up there and you won't let them in, you won't get to any of the other ones on the other side.
So it's about not closing the door to them. It's just letting them in, let them flow through like water.
Yeah.
Me, it reminds me of the Chinese proverb about labeling things as good or bad. And so we tend to see our certain hard emotions as being very negative. And actually, this reminds me to just accept it as it is and not label, because the purpose could be, even more helpful perhaps than something that we'd embrace.
Yes. Yes. This is something, Catholic school. Yeah, Lynn. I love that you brought that up. And I think that's a perfect segue into this conversation around primary emotion. There's a perception about emotion, that there's negative and positive emotion, good or bad emotion. So what have you all been taught about positive and negative emotion? Let's start with positive emotion. What have you been told is, quote, positive emotion?
Joy. Peace.
Lynn just went the big,
Are
I
those
couldn't see Lynn, but she's got a big old smile, fake smile on. Joy, peace.
Lynn, I have the double whammy. I'm British as well as brought up as a Catholic. You can imagine.
We've had this conversation, Natasha.
Yes.
Happy. The only
Happy.
positive thing, you have to be happy all the time. That's
Happy.
it. I don't give a crap how you feel. Pretend you're happy.
Mm.
What other positive emotions?
Gratitude.
Yeah.
I mean,
I find it interesting. You guys are stuck in trying to come up with positive emotions. I see a lot of chin scratching and like eyes going up.
Well, you said what were we raised to see as positive emotion, correct?
Right. Yeah. Or when I say positive emotion, what do you interpret that to be? Yeah. Are you raised
enthusiastic, cheerful?
Cheerful.
But not too cheerful.
Yeah.
And not too enthusiastic.
Right, not too enthusiastic because then you're crazy.
Yes.
Yep. Enthusiasm, cheerfulness. So how about negative emotions?
anger.
Mm-hmm.
Sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
Hatred.
Mm-hmm.
Envy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Vulnerability. Oh, that's not an emotion, but being vulnerable.
That's the emotion.
Fear.
Fear. Oh. Yeah.
Put on a fucking happy face.
Mm-hmm. How about shame?
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah.
Guilt.
Guilt. Yep.
Disgust. So we're taught that there are emotions that are acceptable, good or positive, and then emotions that are negative interpretation, unacceptable or bad. And what are you told to do with your negative emotions?
Tuck them away. Don't
Tuck them
express
in.
them. Don't say anything if you can't be nice.
Ah. If you don't have anything
Okay.
nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Anything at all. Mhm.
Yep.
Well, my-
Especially as women, we're given that one, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's a load of crap.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it.
Yes.
We're fed like such garbage with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be emotional.
Don't be
Always,
emotional.
always be polite.
What the hell does that mean? Always? No, I'm not yelling at you, Janae.
No, I know.
Be
But
polite.
right? I mean, it's like, no matter what, always
get
be
triggered.
polite.
Mm-hmm. So we're told to push our emotions down. We're told to cover them up. We're told to, it sounds like, hide them.
Not have them. I was
Yeah.
told not to have them.
Not even to have them. Because what happens to people who express, quote, negative emotions?
They
What
need
were you-
psychological help.
They're damaged in some
Well-
way, need to be fixed.
Yeah.
And they're not nice to be around.
They're not nice.
Debbie Downer, right? Debbie Downer, or what is it? Misery Loves Company. Like all these sayings related to people that are having negative emotions.
Yes,
You're an
Debbie
outcast.
Downer. Outcasted, you're rejected.
Yeah.
Keep on walking. Don't look. Don't listen.
Don't look, don't listen, don't pay attention. Ignore it, avoid it.
Oh, you're off. Like if you're freaking out, you must be off balance. Like, you know, send you to the loony bin.
Yes, I was told that
With
this week.
women in hysteria, right?
Yeah, histrionic. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What were you told this week, Lynn?
That I was crazy. Because I was emotional.
Because you're emotional. Stop
Oh,
being
wow.
crazy.
I was crazy.
Out of control.
Yeah, so we're taught
Period.
to bury these things. What'd you say?
On your period.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Oh, my
Oh
God.
my God. Are you premenstrual?
yes.
Yeah. Like, that is the worst thing a guy can ever say
Actually,
Like- to
My
a
boyfriend
woman.
said that to me. My boyfriend said that to me a week and a half or so, 2 weeks ago. He was like, I was emotional about something. He's like, "Are you on your period? Are you about to
Oh,
get
my
your-"
God.
And I was like, even if I was.
Yeah.
He was like, I can always tell when you're about to get on your period because you get really kind of wacky. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, excuse me, you can't speak to me that way. And blah, 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 you know, there was we had a whole conversation about that. So yeah, especially as
Yeah.
women, what is
Yeah.
the message that you see men being given around anger, sadness, joy, these quote negative emotions?
Anger's
Um,
not encouraged, I think.
Yeah. They're encouraged to put their anger into something. Like, let that anger fuel your, you know, your the way you compete, the way you behave. Let that be, you know, fuel to the flame or to the fire.
It's accepted for men to be angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's societally. I mean, I don't know why, but it seems to be okay for men to get angry. They can slam their fists down, whatever. But it's accepted. They can't be
And
sad.
then if women do it, then they're hysterical or they're out of control or they're being a bitch.
Yeah, and you're right.
Yeah.
And Lynn was saying, you know, it's not okay for a man to be sad, but he can be angry.
Yeah.
Don't cry.
Stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip. Yeah, and it's okay for a woman to be sad. A woman is supposed to cry, but she's not supposed
Right.
to. So there's a lot that we are fed around emotion. A lot. Do you hear this? This is a lot of stuff. This is stuff that's not only familial, but also cultural and gender specific. So it's no wonder why when these emotions come into our guest house, we don't know how to be with them, because who taught you how? Who taught you? Who taught you how to sit with sadness? Who taught you how to sit with anger? Who taught you how to be with joy? Who showed you these things?
Our dysfunctional family and society members that were around us that also didn't get trained or shared, how to deal or be with
emotion. And then we're now stepping into roles in leadership in our lives and in our families and in our relationships and being told that we need to develop, quote, emotional intelligence. And I even have a problem with the, quote, emotional intelligence movement. It's like learning how to identify your emotions and having emotional awareness is not the same thing as learning how to be with your emotion, to process your emotion, to sit through your emotion. It's not the same thing. So there's not a lot of guidance out there. And there's definitely not a lot of information that's helping you distinguish and discern between your emotional experiences. I personally do not believe in the concept of negative or positive emotions because of the connotation of good and bad. I believe that there is just emotion. It's just emotion. All of it is equal. There is no negative or positive or good or bad or more or less than anything else. Grief and sadness is just the same as joy and, gratitude. They're all the same. And if we can begin to strip off the misinterpretations, misunderstandings that have been given to us by our parents and our culture and society around emotion, then that's the first step into allowing ourselves to feel them and express them, especially as female leaders. This is part of what I believe the new feminine rising is inviting, and inviting from the masculine, right? Some of what's happened is that we've emotionally suppressed parts of ourselves as men and as women for such a long time that we're no longer able to connect on this very thing that we call the human experience, because we're made to believe it's not okay to be human. It's not okay to have this range of emotions. And there's movements like positive psychology that I am definitely a part of. Hypnotherapy and rapid transformational therapy is all about affirmative language and positive thinking and law of attraction. It's all born out of this humanistic and positive psychology movement, which is beautiful and so vital. Yet the problem is that if you don't also look at the other spectrum of the dark and the shadow parts, then we're denying a whole part of our existence. And that's when the suppression comes. And when you suppress the emotion, these sideways things happen. So that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about the 4 F's, which is the process for feeling, for connecting to emotions and moving through emotions. And then I'm going to talk about the primary and secondary emotions and what that means. So the way to heal our core wounding, right? So what happens when you are, like Lynn, just a moment ago, you said you were feeling triggered, right? When we were talking about this stuff around emotions, you said, I'm feeling triggered. So I'd like you to unpack that a little bit for us. When you say you're feeling triggered, what emotion were you experiencing?
I was getting angry.
Angry. Okay. So there was anger there. Now, that is a primary emotion. Now, that primary emotion of anger, when it's attached to a trigger, it means it's connected to our core wound. So if you just do a little breathing and just kind of drop in for a second, what is that memory from the past, that experience from the past, from your childhood, that belief system, that wound that was just tapped?
Oh, anytime I expressed any type of negative emotion, I was told I belonged in a mental hospital.
Okay. Which was an experience of what for you?
What do you mean?
So when somebody told you not to express your emotions, or you're gonna, if you do, you need to end up in a mental hospital, what was the interpretation that you would have about that?
Be happy. Otherwise, if you're not happy, you're not right. Something's wrong with you.
Something's wrong with me.
Right. You're not worthy. You're not worthy of being a human. You're not worthy of anybody even giving you attention because we want to go lock you up.
Right. So my experience isn't welcome. I'm not worthy, and I have to hide myself in order to be accepted.
And not only do I need to hide myself, I need to be put away.
I will be put away if I don't.
Put away.
Yeah.
I'm hidden from the world.
So our core wounds are always associated to our primary emotions. So that's how, one of the ways you know that when you're triggered, that's raw, pure, primary feeling. It's not secondary. We'll talk about what secondary is in a minute. So when we are working on ourselves to connect to our core wounding, which is ultimately a practice of learning to desensitize ourselves to these triggers, right? That's what we're looking to do, so that when something happens in our current life that touches that core wound, we can be choiceful in our response to it, responsive rather than reactive, right? That's our goal. Even if it catches us, we can separate, witness, move through, let go, choose again, rather than being unconsciously reactive to that external trigger. So this process is designed to help you connect to the core emotions that are associated with the core wound and move through it. So it's called the 4 F's. So step 1 is find it. Step 2 is face it. Step 3 is feel it. And step 4 is free it. Find it, face it, feel it, free it. So let's talk about each one of these now. Step 1 is to find it. When you are being triggered, when something is happening, and there's even a secondary emotional experience that you might be having, like anxiety or depression, for example, those are secondary emotions, not primary emotions. The first thing for you to do is to find the emotional charge itself in your body. Find it in your body. So when you have that anger, when you have that grief or that sadness, find it first in your body, where it's living in you. Is it in your belly? Is it in your chest? Is it in your hands, your throat, your jaw, behind your eyes and your forehead, right? Maybe you even sense it down in your womb or your legs, your feet, wherever you feel that emotion. The first thing is to find it in the body. So one of the ways we avoid our emotions is that we try to go into our head. We try to pop out. Have you heard me say this before to you guys? Maybe in coaching conversations, I'm like, I notice you're popping out. So when you're popping out, you're moving out of an embodied experience, and in somatically, you're no longer connected to your physical body and you're back up in your head. I call that popping out. So the first step is to find the experience in your body. So when you're triggered, the first step is to breathe and be like, where do I feel this in me? And make contact with the physical sensations. Okay. The next piece is to face it. So once you feel that experience in your body, you sense that grief, the heaviness of that grief on your chest and the shortness of breath, or the panic or the fear. For me, when I'm triggered, a lot of times I have a sensation of like this tingling and vibrating sensation that and warming that happens on the inside of my biceps on my inner arms, and then it kind of expands down to my fingers, so I can feel into that. Then you face it compassionately. Okay, so rather than in that moment sensing the grief and the heaviness in the chest, or the fear, or the anger, or the sadness, whatever it is, or the joy, and just being like, no, I'm not. I'm going to breathe deep and I'm going to shake it off and I'm going to walk away from it, which is one option. And sometimes you're not in a situation where you can process and you have to breathe deep, shake it off, and move on and process later. That happens. If you're in the space where you can, or you're trying to process, what you would do then is say like, okay, I see it and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to face it. I'm not going to turn my energy or my awareness away from it. I'm not going to try to soothe it or stop it. I'm just going to face it. And that right there is an act of choicefulness. Did you see that? So I'm choosing now to look at it. As uncomfortable as this may be, I'm going to look at it. And the next
I don't know what that means. You're going to look at it. You're in a panic. My heart's racing.
So when let's say that you're stuck in a fear experience.
Okay.
Right? You're having fear. In that moment where you're experiencing fear, you can either say, I'm not gonna deal with this right now. Right?
Okay. Yep.
I don't want to deal with this fear right now. And I don't want to deal with the thing that's underneath this fear. I don't want it. Right?
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of facing it. It's turning away from it.
Right.
Versus to face it is like, okay, I'm experiencing fear right now. And
Okay.
I'm gonna step towards it.
Okay.
It's a small, nuanced moment, but it's a moment of choice. It's a moment in which you begin to intentionally and consciously process the emotion rather than have it consume and control you. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, you're either pushing it away and suppressing it and denying it, or it's going to be like a tidal wave and it's going to take over your experience and you're not going to be able to process it with intention to bring your healthy self online. You're just lost in it. Do you know that experience when the fear just takes over and you're not intentionally being with it? It's just got you. So when you can start this process of feeling it in your body, finding it in your body, and then intentionally be like, okay, I see the fear. I feel it in my chest. I feel my heart beating. My pulse is pounding. I'm going to look at this now. That's the next step. I'm going to face it. The third step is to feel it. That means we'll keep using fear as an example, Lynn. And you and I have done this a lot in our coaching together privately. Then we're like, let's go in. Let's find that fear and let's actually turn up the intensity on it. Let's bring it forward. Let's sit into that feeling rather than stepping away from that feeling. Let's move into it and actually see if you can even intensify it. So let it come through. Again, the distinction between this process and an unconscious emotional experience is that you know that you're facing it and you know that you're creating room for it to move. There's a slight witnessing element of it. Do you feel that? Has everybody felt that? You know what I'm talking about, right? Where you've been like, oh God, I'm so sad and I'm just going to cry. And you know that you're sad and you know that you're crying for your sadness, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And then the final stage is to free it, right? that is the process of actually letting it go as far and as deep and as wide as it needs to go, and then bringing your healthy self on board. That's when you bring your healthy self on board to rescue that inner child. To be like, I've got you. I feel you, and all of this emotion that you were always told that you were never allowed to have, to own, to express, to experience. I'm loving you and all of the darkness of this. I'm loving you and all of the messiness of this. I'm loving you in all of the overwhelm of this. I am with you in this. That's when you can free it. So you're helping your inner child grow up. You're giving her a safe space to express. And so the more you allow the experience, or you allow yourself to experience an emotion, maybe a painful emotion in the body, the more deep the release is. And so there's a sense of acceptance that comes up. It's like choosing to press the mute button versus turn on the volume and then turn up the volume. So as I share this, what comes up for you?
I think Jess, you've facilitated some of this anyway for the thing in North Carolina. That was a lot of that.
Yes.
Releasing it.
There's a lot of that.
Letting it speak, and then just burning it was great.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see this all now. Okay. I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good.
Yeah.
For us and our little children inside.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Justine.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm just, well, first, the moment that when I remembered my parents telling me I belonged in a mental institution, I totally suppressed that until it came up half an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even remembered that.
Do you mind, Lynn, can I go into this a little bit with you now? Do I have your permission?
Yeah, because I'm going through all this as we go through it.
Yeah. So let's actually, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to find this emotion in your body right now. Just sense whatever this emotion is, if it's sadness or grief, just feel where it is in your body.
It's all up here. It's in my heart.
Just keeping your eyes closed and just breathing into your heart space. I'm feeling that emotion. What is that emotion, Lynn?
It's sadness.
Yeah.
It's shame. It's shame. So much shame that I'm not worthy. That I'm not human.
Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead and just breathe into that. Now it's time for you to face that. That's that. I'm not human.
I belong. I belong in a cage.
I belong in a cage. I'm so wrong that I belong in a cage.
I belong in it because all I did was express an emotion. Sadness, anger, frustration, giving my opinion.
So I want you to just stay in silence now, no words.
Ugh.
That's one of your strategies. You like to label, you like to talk, and I want you to just feel. So I want you to just feel that, Lynn, that feeling that you had when you were just that little girl and you were bringing your emotion to your family, the people that you felt like you should feel safe with. And then their reaction to you was to reject you, to shame you. And that deep sense of not worthiness that you felt in that moment, and the fear. So just face that now and feel that in your body, not with your head. Tapping into that heart space. Breathing into that sadness. See if you can just let that sadness come out. That grief. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. You're doing great. So if you notice yourself wanting to pull away from it, just move back in because you can hold this. Just allowing yourself to feel that. Yeah, keeping your breath with you. Yeah. Now beginning to invite your healthy self to come forward and to meet this little girl who felt so abandoned. And imagine your healthy self stepping towards her. Perhaps there's an embrace that you can picture in your mind, or maybe that you want to give yourself physically now. Just allowing your healthy self, this part that holds unconditional, essential goodness for you, to hold that part that feels all of that sadness and all of that shame and all of that grief. Yeah. Stay with this. Just stay with it. Don't help out. Stay here. There's no need to rush out. All of those times you were told to push your emotion down, but this is not the time. Yeah, there. Keep breathing.
Oh.
Yeah. That's good. Another sigh in with some sound out.
Oh. Okay. Oh. I'm sorry, everybody.
No, 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 no. Don't do that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, don't do that again. Hold on, right there. What was that part that wanted you to apologize?
That was the put on a happy face child.
Yeah. So let's just acknowledge that part. Really done a good job of helping you hold emotion back for a long time. Apologize for it.
Thank you.
There. That's a good word.
Thank you.
Okay.
Talk about a memory so deep. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for holding the space.
Of course.
So Lynn, how are you feeling right now in this moment?
Much better, believe it or not.
Can you describe what that means physically?
I had a heaviness. Well, I think what started it is a person in my family called me crazy a couple days ago, and I haven't understood why. That's been so awful, and I've just been exhausted. Like I've been holding on to something. And then when this memory popped in of threatening for me to be sent away and facing, I feel lighter. I'm not tired anymore. I was tired a half an hour ago. I'm not tired.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very odd.
Yeah.
My chest isn't as tight. Like my heart's not racing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you know you're not a little girl with crazy emotions, and your emotions are powerful and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I know that when I see your sadness and your grief and your anger, it makes me want to love the fuck out of you.
It's just so messy in there. It's just so messy. I need to accept the messiness of it. And it's not messy. It's just me.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. We can take that label away.
It's just me.
It's just
all of me.
part of you. It's just part of you.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, everybody.
So, did everybody see the way that that process worked? It happens quickly and it happens cyclically as well. So in the moment, as you're being with those feelings, you may go back to dropping back into finding it, dropping back into facing it, dropping back into feeling it. And it may happen in waves in one experience of processing. Because we have a tendency through our survival strategies to find ways to pull ourselves out of the emotional experience because of all of these things that we've been taught. And Lynn was really brave to keep going back in, and that's what that is. It's bravery, and it's courageous to keep facing it over and over again. It's really brave. So does anybody just really quickly want to popcorn out or shout out some phrases around the gold that they see in Lynn for her experience now? Yes, you're going to receive it.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to honor you for diving in and being willing to go there. Because if you don't, like that bravery is so important. If you don't do that, then it's just poisoning yourself. So I really honor and respect you for going there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janae.
Then the gold I see in you is still that amazing courageousness I met in April. And it's still there. It's still beautiful.
Thank you.
Amazing. Admirable. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
In the gold I see in you is the bravery, that incredible strength that you've got and that you show us all the time. And I love your hair. You look so well. You look amazing at the moment.
Thank you.
Yes.
What was interesting is just when you had me vision me taking care of that little child was actually very sick with cancer.
Mm.
It was that child who was sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's beautiful. You're a healer, Lynn. That's what I see. The gold I see in you is your healer.
Thank you.
Through your fearless example. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Because it's really important that not only we express emotion, but that we feel safe in the expression of it. Right? Have you heard of the concept of a vulnerability hangover?
No, but it sounds like a Brene Brown concept.
It might be a Brene thing. But yeah, vulnerability hangovers after we do something where we really show ourselves, then there's a tendency sometimes that's an expansion moment for there to be a contraction afterwards. And they call that a vulnerability hangover. It's like, oh God, what did I say? I let people see. What did I do? I shouldn't have. And there's like this guilt and this shame. And just if that comes up for you, just know it, call it what it is, and go back through find it, face it, feel it, free it, process again. And this is the process, right?
Yes.
Continuing to turn over the rocks.
4 F's.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit now about these primary and secondary emotions, which Lynn was, sharing in this experience that she's had so beautifully. So, the first primary emotion is anger or rage. And this one is one of the most suppressed feelings, especially as children, but definitely as women, we were told that it's not okay to express our anger. So when, you see a little kid throwing a temper tantrum or, screaming or raging, the first reaction you see from the majority of parents is, shh, be quiet, calm down, stop it, get a hold of yourself, don't do that, everybody's looking at you. You've heard any of those things, right? Like anger is just not given space. And you've already talked about some of those things. And there's a fear around it because it can assume an aggressive and violent nature when expressed inappropriately. That's where the taboo comes from. Unconscious anger is different than conscious anger. But unfortunately, because we're not given the space to process our anger as children and taught how to hold it like a superpower, then it does come out unconsciously for a lot of adults. And that's when it does cause harm to others or to the self. Sometimes with anger as a primary emotion, there's a tendency to direct it inward. What the fuck is wrong with me? I'm such a piece of shit. I'm useless. I'm worthless. How could you have? Who do you think you are? That's inwardly directed anger. We're oftentimes taught how to do that through examples that we see around us versus what we're encouraging you to do, which is to actually outwardly express the anger. When processing anger, it's important, and tapping into that as a primary emotion, it's important to try to make it as much of a physical expression as you can. So something to push against, something to hit against, using your voice are really great tools to be with and process your primary emotion of anger. And it typically has a short-lived and explosive quality to it, right? It's like this heat. It's oftentimes associated with the color red. I'm seeing red because I'm so angry, right? There's this heat and this energy behind it, and it's explosive. But being connected to, a lot of the times, anger is also the doorway to our passion, right? Like, I don't know, but I'm going to guess, Justine, that it makes you fucking angry to see somebody abuse an animal. To see someone not care for an animal that's sick. There's a part of you that gets angry about that. And that angry part also has a passion, and that passion is what drives you to help heal animals.
Yeah.
I get angry. I get angry when I see women especially undercharging for their services. It makes me so fucking angry. And that anger is into a passion to help other female entrepreneurs and other women clear these blocks so that we can step into our worth and charge what we're worth and make what we're worth, right? So our anger is the doorway to our passion. Now, when anger is denied, we experience secondary feelings. The first way that you know that you're denying your anger and the expression of it is that you're beating yourself up. So instead of taking the energy out, you're turning it in. It can also turn into depression, physical pain. In extreme cases, it can turn into things like anorexia, bulimia, self-mutilation, or other expressions of self-hatred. And when it's denied, it can also turn towards someone else. It can become more on the benign side, like complaining or gossiping, or judging others, or castrating others, putting other people down. And it can mushroom from there to verbal or even physical abuse and violence. Does anybody see how they may have lived in their secondary expression of anger?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah? Can you tell me more, Janae?
Depression, right?
Yeah.
Stifling how I have felt and not feeling able to go there, you know, in survival self mode, just kind of keeping my head above water.
Yeah.
And yeah, that turning into depression.
Yeah. Depression is a really common side effect of repressed anger. So let's talk now about sadness, grief, and heartbreak, which is the next primary feeling. I think we're all acquainted with these two. So oftentimes underneath anger is a level of sadness. So when we've done anger processing in this group, Worth to Wealth, and the retreats that you've attended or working with me privately, in most cases, you'll see the anger turns into tears. It starts out like, fuck you, and then it's like, oh. And there's this sadness and this grief that comes up underneath. Women especially are taught these days not to accept our sadness and our grief and our heartbreak because we're being told to be a superwoman. You're not allowed to have the time to feel sad and to feel grief and to be heartbroken over the loss of relationship or children growing and leaving the home or whatever. Even the heartbreak of the ways that we betray ourselves. I know for me, this is one of the deepest heartbreaks that I feel, is the acknowledgement and the realization when I've betrayed myself. Yeah, Natasha says it's weak. Yeah, that's the message. It's weakness. Your sadness and your grief and your heartbreak is a sign of weakness, and you can't be a superwoman if you're weak. So, in many cases with sadness and grief, we give it a superficial level of expression. Maybe there's like a short cry in the bathroom or in the car. Maybe it lasts for a minute or two, and that's about it. But we don't allow it to go into its depth. Because I know I'll speak from my experience, until I learned how to really connect to the depth of my grief and my sadness, I was afraid of what was at the bottom of it. There was this sense of like, if I go all the way to the bottom of whatever that dark black hole is, I don't know if I'll come back. Like, will I stay down there? Can I come back up? Will I be depressed forever? Right? So we don't oftentimes go to the level of the depth of the sadness. We stay at a surface level with it. And it oftentimes feels like a pain in the heart. It can have like a pulling sensation, a wave-like quality, like feels like you're going into a hole. I know for me, when I am expressing my grief, a lot of times it literally feels like my heart or my chest is like coming apart. Like I can, like you talk about heart rate, it feels like it's literally like, oh, like I can feel it moving and shifting away from each other. Like the ventricles of my heart are like opening. So a denied experience of sadness and grief, a heartbreak, it can turn into coldness, bitterness, numbness, spacing out, detaching from everything, even spiritual bypassing. I'm not going to feel the sadness. I'm just going to go straight up to God and to the light, and I'm just going to skip this whole part. One of my coaches that I worked with last year, who really stepped me into this embodiment work and helped me heal around the trauma from my marriage and everything that happened there. At one point he and I in a room doing an emotional processing activity, and he wanted me to express all of my anger at my husband. And I was like, I don't have any anger. I don't really know what you're talking about. I don't know what to say. And he was like, you don't get to skip this part. And I was like, He's like, you just don't get to skip it. I was bypassing. So oftentimes problems in not expressing grief and sadness can manifest in issues with lungs and the breathing. So respiratory infections, common here, bronchitis, coughing. It's associated with chest.
That's in Chinese medicine too. So if you get pneumonia and colds and chest stuff, you've got some grief you need to deal with.
Yeah, it's in Ayurveda as well.
Yeah. So many ancient forms of medicine have identified this. And I'm curious to know who here has had an experience of denying sadness and noticing any of these symptoms, the coldness, the bitterness.
Oh yeah, I actually contracted pneumonia shortly after moving to LA.
Mm. Yeah. That's tough. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Our physical body tells us so much when we're denying emotion.
Yeah.
Marissa Peer has a quote that she got from somewhere else that is like, those emotions which we suppress cause other organs to weep. I don't know where she got that from, some other guy, but it's true. Your lungs are weeping. So that's sadness, grief, and heartbreak. And the next one is fear. Okay, so fear feeds off of situations that are imagined in the future or remembered from the past. And it's rarely proportional responses to what's happening in the moment, right? Fear is almost always disproportionate. And it can have an intense, paralyzing, and frozen quality. You know, fear can be fight, flight, or freeze. And the fear of heartbreak is what often keeps people from opening up to love, right? Which is ultimately what we all want here, is to be open to love. And it can turn into anxiety, panic, and terror. And it has an intense inward, like pulling, like screaming quality to it. It's like a high-pitched feeling. I think about it as like being on pins and needles. Like it's also very hot, like anger. Fear can get really hot. It can also get really cold, because if you're in freeze, I notice that all the blood then in that moment rushes into the vital organs, and your hands can become cold and numb and heavy. So when fear is denied or repressed, it can turn into false self-confidence, egomania, arrogance, which are what we call counterphobic symptoms. So it's an overcompensation. Does that make sense? You guys know people like that, right?
Jess, can I just interject here for a minute?
Sure.
I'm so sorry, but I have to go.
Okay.
I will watch the rest of the video.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry, but I do have to go.
No
Sending you all love. Yeah, and I'm so interested in what you have to say. So I feel bad for having to leave.
No, that's okay. We're at the top of the hour anyway. We're about to end in a couple of minutes, so no problem.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you'll
Okay.
be watching the recording and you'll get the rest of it.
Thank you so much. Sending you all love.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Thanks, Janae. Bye. So it can also turn into phobias. So it can turn into, becoming a worrywart, worrying about everything, never taking risks, staying the same, or staying in unsatisfying or even abusive situations. You've probably experienced this, in toxic work environments, toxic relationships, even in your own physical body, maybe your relationship with food. And the thing that makes it so difficult is obviously it's scary to face fear, because it makes you feel like you're losing control. It's an out of control feeling. And at the deepest level, it's the lost soul of feeling disconnected and separated from God or source. Just that total sense of separation. It's like this panic of like, what am I even doing here in this perceived hostile world? Nobody's here to protect me, and I am deeply, deeply vulnerable. All I want is love again, right? So these are the things that come up when fear is denied. Does anybody resonate with any of these? Yeah, Lynn's like, uh-huh. Yeah, I know, Lynn. We've done a lot of work around fear. Yeah. So the next one is longing. And I find this to be a really interesting emotion that most people don't spend the time.
You didn't say what happens when fear is denied.
Those are all things that happen when fear is denied.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. The next one is longing. And longing is not an emotion that a lot of people connect to, but it's actually a very common experience, but not a lot of languaging is put towards longing. So longing is, underneath all three of the previously mentioned. It's underneath anger, it's underneath sadness, and it's underneath fear. And it's this basic pain of being separated from source, from God, from existence, and an intense desire to return home. And this is, the people who I think that I attract and who are in this space right now in this moment, we're seekers. We're longing for that sense of being home in ourselves, right? We're all longing for that sense of peace. And it's a very vulnerable and a very raw feeling to long for something. So turning into the longing that's underneath the sadness, the anger, and the fear is a liberation in a lot of situations. To be able to really connect to the fact, like underneath this fear, underneath this grief, underneath this anger, is like, I'm longing for love. I'm longing for safety. I'm longing for connection. And if I can be with the longing, with the ache of that, then actually the anger and the sadness and the fear can dissipate. And it oftentimes feels similar to experience of grief, which is that like I'm being pulled into a dark hole. It's a very inward drawing experience. And it can come in waves, and it comes with like it can be like deep wailing and sobbing, and you might also experience it as like continuous weeping. If you've ever had that, like this, like, have you ever had a day where you just kind of walk around and you're just kind of weeping all day? There's often times just a longing that's there, right? So when it's denied, we reject all of our feelings. And a lot of times there is a tendency to become self-sufficient, tough, and independent. Oh, look at Natasha's like, ah. Yeah. So when longing is denied, it can turn into and manifest into any of the things that we've already talked about: depression, anxiety, because it's an underwriting primary emotion. So it can show up in all of these other ways. But a lot of times it's like, I'm going to shut that longing off, and I'm just going to become, very seriously supported by myself. And for most of us, what we don't recognize is that the way to heal longing is by connecting to God. source, consciousness, grace, spirit, nature, whatever you want to call it. Higher self. And then the last primary feeling is joy, love, and peace. Yay. So this is the experience of having our needs being met, of pleasure, of happiness. And it's important to experience and express joy. A lot of times we're also taught to repress joy and happiness just as much as we're taught to repress anger, right? Like you were saying earlier, enthusiasm, don't be too enthusiastic. Cheerful, don't be too cheerful, right? Don't be too grateful. Don't be too much in your joy, right? So it can include experiences of bliss and ecstasy and gladness, gratitude. These are all expressions of the primary emotion of joy. And when it's expressed in unconditional love, it's this like experience of total acceptance of myself and others just the way that they are and as I am. And if it's truly deeply authentic, it also includes experiencing joy through other people's happiness, not just through our own. That's that ego-less experience. So when joy is denied, its shadow is highly conditional. It can be very demanding and unaccepting, as in, I can only love you if you do what I want or feel what I want you to feel. So when we suppress our joy, it can become very conditional. I will only have joy when these things happen. It's the if-then scenarios. And also, it can be about fleeting pleasure, distraction, or appearance, and it may be superficial and even include taking pleasure in other people's unhappiness when it's suppressed. Because, haha, you're not happy just like me, right? It's hard to admit, but I'm pretty sure that every one of us has done that in some way. So these drawing the distinctions between your primary feelings, which are, again, anger and rage, grief, sadness, or heartbreak, longing, fear, and joy, love, and peace, with these secondary feelings, which are, beating yourself up, depression, anxiety, numbness, detachment, right? Self-sufficiency, independence. Starting to draw this distinction helps you know when you are in your healthy self, your wounded self, or your survivor self. Because as you can see, all of these secondary feelings are byproducts of what? Your survival self. They're coping mechanisms. They're strategies to help you avoid connecting to that deeper emotion. So, your practice for the next 2 weeks is to learn how to identify when you're in a primary or secondary emotion, to start becoming tuned in to your primary versus secondary emotion. In the beginning, it may just be a simple acknowledgement. Just the awareness of it. You may not move into processing. You just may be like, ooh, I am definitely in a secondary emotion here. Or, oh, I'm definitely in anger. Okay, cool, primary emotion. From there, you can begin practicing the 4 Fs. Find it, face it, feel it, free it. And again, like I said 2 weeks ago, this is a great process to do with your buddies in this group. So when you're noticing, I've got rage coming up, I've got sadness coming up, I've got fear coming up, I've got longing or joy coming up, you can come to one another and be like, hey, can you hold space for me for, 10 minutes to process this so I can practice finding it, facing it, feeling it, and freeing it. I want to be witnessed. I need someone who understands to see me in this. And you, as the buddy, don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just hold space for them and just be with them. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to coach them. You don't have to try to fix it. Definitely don't try to fix it. Just witness. Because being witnessed in the expression of your emotion is the thing that we're really working to heal around this. That's a really big part of it, being witnessed in it and still feeling accepted and loved. So that is your practice. Are there any questions about primary and secondary emotions or the practice for the next 2 weeks? Any reflections, final reflections on this? I know I've kept you a couple minutes over tonight. It's a lot of teaching, I know.
No, thank you. That was good flow into what we'll do for the next 2 weeks. I will do for the next 2 weeks.
Great. It's Justine.
For me, it was just amazing self-awareness. It'll be good to practice to catch myself, not to catch, but to understand, to step back.
Yeah. Step back and in, right?
Step back and then jump in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Recognize, then jump, then find it.
Yeah.
Recognize it. Yeah.
Yeah. Recognizing it. That's the first step. That's it.
Definitely has been the first step. Not just being unaware is how I've lived my life for a while.
But I'm changing that now, right?
I am changing that now.
Yes. All right. So why don't we do our one-word checkouts? So, and why don't we start with everybody just closing our eyes and taking a nice deep breath in to find that sense of presence. You found that one word that describes your experience now. You can go ahead and open up your eyes. And let's start with Lynn.
I'm sad.
Sad. Thank you. Justine.
Heartfelt.
Natasha. Oh, I can't do.
Joy.
Joy. Oh, thank you. And my word is love. Thank you guys for showing up and playing full out on today's call. Again, as always, I look forward to supporting you. And if you are tapping into your emotions over the next 2 weeks or when you are, please come to us and share in the group. If you don't reach out and you don't speak out, we can't be here for you. So reach out and speak out so that we can support you. And another friendly reminder, it's July, August, we have a few more months, but don't forget you still have a second RTT session to do. So if you haven't done that yet, just know that you've got a few more months left because we have, I think, until November, but I just want to put it out there on the radar for you to keep it in your awareness. Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. Next time. Bye.